Welcome back to the Lit Lane Jury Box, Lit Lane Jurors. Good morning. Happy MLK Day. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, Tamika McMillan. I don't know if you guys are still here. I think I might have started a minute too late, but hey, we here, and I can definitely wait for you guys to come back because I need to put up this. Boom. So welcome back to Trial Watch with Demetra. I am Demetra Lit all day, aka Judge D Lit. And today is the start of a new trial watch for us. We are gonna embark on a new trial, a new set of players, a new set of consequences, and it's called the Ponzi scheme wife trial. Now, in real time, this trial is going on. Hey, sweetie, good morning. Welcome back to the Nigeria Box. In real time, this trial is taking place because today is a federal holiday. It's not, of course, but it will resume in real time on tomorrow. They will be on day 4. We are on part 1. Okay, I plan on being here today with you guys for a few hours. And we're gonna get into it now. While I'm waiting for the jurors, hey, welcome back, Renee. While I'm waiting for the jurors to pile up in here, let me go ahead and I shared this on a community wall, but I'll go ahead and play it now. And it was just one of the what we need to know or what we know so far. Welcome back, Living. What we know so far, and then we're gonna jump into the opening statements. Okay. I'm glad to see y'all today. Please hit the like. If you're new to this channel, welcome to the Lit Lane Jury Box. We are often called one of the newest trial watching chats in the sector, in the community, in the trial watch community. We are opinionated sort, a little bit impatient, intelligent, boisterous. Okay, Renee, boisterous. And sometimes a little bit unruly, but you're in the right place. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you can get the notifications. And of course, thank you for watching. Let's go ahead and jump into this kind of like an intro to the trial, and then we'll get to the trial. Okay, let me see. Right here. Oh, let me also really quickly hit that like Tweety said. Let me real quickly. Did Tamika get back yet? Tamika, I don't think she come back yet. She came in before I started. But let me real quickly throw up this fair usage, of course. Of course, we're using fair use in order to do these reactions and play this content for criticism, educational purposes about the legal system in our country and all of that jazz. Let me say fair use really quickly. Boom. Okay. All right. So let's look at what we know or what led into the trial. Let me check this out. Okay, let's check this out.
Natalie Cochran, a former pharmacist, is accused of poisoning her husband, charged with first-degree murder for allegedly using insulin to kill him.
You are the defendant in this matter, obviously. I mean, you are aware of that.
Yes, sir.
Michael and Natalie Cochran had 2 kids. He was 38 years old when he died. In early February of 2019, he was sick, had a seizure at the couple's home, and then died 5 days later in hospice. Prosecutors say Natalie killed Michael to cover up her $2.5 million fraud.
They're not 2 separate things that you can unravel and say there's a federal Ponzi scheme and there's a state murder case. They're combined.
7 months after Michael died, Natalie Cochran was charged by the feds for wire fraud and bank fraud as part of a Ponzi scheme. The Cochrans owned a company, Tactical Solutions Group, which they claimed sold weapons to the U.S. Department of Defense. Federal prosecutors alleged it was a fake business. They had no contracts with the government. The millions of dollars investors, who were mostly family and friends, sunk into the company was actually spent on a lavish lifestyle. Cochran pled guilty in 2020. She was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison.
The financial crime gives rise to motive.
The state alleges that Michael had no idea the family business was a sham, and they say Natalie killed him when he became suspicious and started asking too many questions, especially after his parents invested their entire savings and were not getting their money back. During Cochran's sentencing, Michael's mother said she took advantage of us because we loved her and believed everything she said, lie after lie after lie, and still no deposits were made. The money never came. Cochran's attorney claims that Michael was a part of the scheme.
There's evidence that points to, I'll say that, to the alleged victim's involvement in the case from the get-go.
Natalie Cochran was indicted for Michael's murder in 2021. The case was temporarily dismissed while the state exhumed his body. She was re-indicted in October of 2023. Now she faces up to life in prison if convicted.
Ooh, that was a lot. That was a lot. Please like and subscribe. Hello, good morning, Winter. Welcome to the Jury Box. Winter, the official Lit Lane Jury Box trial watch with Demetra Bailiff. If she puts her eyeballs in the chat, that means someone, most likely is going to be me, has become unruly, okay? Now, if she gets to dropping eyeballs every 2 minutes, just know that she's having some type of Tourette syndrome moment, okay? Welcome back to the Lane Jury Box, Connie. I'm glad to see you this morning. So we just I listened to that, but it hit different when I'm sitting up in here listening with you guys, right? So it's West Virginia versus Natalie Cochran. We know that. Natalie is accused of unaliving her husband, Michael Cochran, by way of insulin poisoning. They had 2 children together in their marriage. They seem to have had a phony shell company, right? Selling weapons or something, but found out that wasn't even a real deal. The motive, what we've heard from that was that Natalie Cochran unalived her husband Michael when he became suspicious and started questioning him, was going to take legal action against her because of a $2.5 million Ponzi scheme she got him trapped up into. Now, that's what the defense say, okay? But the state say that's the motive. She was first indicted in 2021. They exhumed the body. They just relaunched this case in 2023, and now we're in the trial. Another key factor is that she has already been sentenced for the Ponzi scheme part. So it's not a question of did she do or speculation of some type of Ponzi scheme. It's been already tried and convicted. She got sentenced to 11 years in the federal prison. So that's not even a question of maybe she did it or what have you. She did it. Okay. So let me see. Anything else that was real important? No, that's about pretty much the basis of we know as judge and jury. And now we're finna get into these opening statements. I thank you guys for joining me. We will be meeting here each day this time and getting through this trial. Also, I'll be here at tonight for the burn pile. Let me see. Close that out. All right, and I have not heard any of this. I have waited for guys.
Talk to you about this trial. Please do not engage in a
West Virginia versus
report the matter
Natalie Cochran.
Or to the bailiff. Counsel may, from time to time, object to the admission of evidence or ask me to rule in your presence on certain points of trial procedure.
Went to say, okay, let me start my mess now. So he been married to, living with, and business partner, has no clue how he was living that lavish lifestyle. Oh, and RIP to him. So we have officially begun the Little Lane Jury Box Commentary. Living said, that's cold doing that to family and friends. Very cold, right? I have an appointment in 15 minutes, so I'll be in and out. No problem, Living. No problem at all. Thank you for even coming and just even supporting. You always here. So, not a problem. Went to a POP, hold this down. Now, don't get me started. We got to at least go 15, 20 minutes without me breaking in, okay? But we'll go ahead and get started with the opening statements. Of course, the prosecution will go first. And, of course, we will stop and discuss their opening statement and so forth, so on, okay? This is commentary content where I don't do as much breaking in. So, let's see.
Although as judge, it is my obligation to rule on these matters, I must emphasize that my rulings are not to be taken as any indication whatsoever that I favor one side or the other. A judge at all times must remain completely neutral, impartial, and indifferent toward the state and the accused. Counsel will presently make their opening statements in which they will tell us what they believe the evidence will show. The opening statements are neither arguments nor evidence and should not be considered by you as such. You should give the lawyers for each side your undivided attention because what they have to say will simplify your task of relating the testimony of each individual witness to the total of all the evidence offered during the trial. Ladies and gentlemen, we will follow a definite order of presentation in this trial. Because the state has the burden of proof, the prosecutor will go forward first to be followed by defense counsel. All right, the state may present its opening statement. Mr. Truman.
Your Honor, before we begin, on behalf of everyone at the defense table, there is an extremely bright light behind you. I don't know if it's a reflection off of something, but it's very distracting from this point of view, and we're having trouble even concentrating. I believe it's a reflection off of a screen to your right.
Yes. This one?
Yes.
This right here?
Yes.
It's this, Judge.
What is it?
If it could be tilted or
Okay.
something.
Is there anything we can do about that? Is that going to affect
That's much better. Thank you.
broadcast media that we have here?
Fine, Judge.
And I can turn up these lights a little bit.
That was the problem, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. All right, now, Mr. Truman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
On February the 5th of 2019, Michael Cochran was a 200-pound, healthy 38-year-old man. By midday of February 6th of 2019, he had lost consciousness and he would never regain consciousness. He died in hospice care 5 days later, February 11th of 2019. How did this happen? Why did it happen? For an answer to that, look no further than this defendant's conduct. As you were told, the state has no direct evidence, the kind of stuff that makes TV shows exciting, the kind of stuff prosecutors love, jurors love. There is no DNA. There is no evidence of fingerprints. There are no videos of what happened. But as Judge Kirkpatrick will instruct you at the end of this, circumstantial evidence is just as valid as that type of direct and scientific evidence. And there is a ton of evidence of this defendant's guilt. All circumstantial. So how did this happen? How did this healthy 38-year-old man go into a state of unconsciousness and never come back from that? On the morning of February 6th of 2019, this defendant advised her friend and neighbor, Jennifer Davis, that she had been sick all night, 103-degree temperature. And she had previously advised that she had cancer and was under chemo treatment. And that chemo treatment, the effects of which were somewhat negated by insulin. There were no diabetics in the Cochran house. And there's no evidence that this defendant was taking insulin to counteract any other of a child who was a severe diabetic had insulin. The defendant knew that. Jennifer Davis, being a good friend, sends her husband with insulin to the defendant's house that morning. About noonish, one way or the other, Michael Cochran collapses in the Cochran house kitchen. Now, the defendant gives various versions of what she saw, what she heard, and what she did, but there's no question that he was unconscious by about 12:20 or so. How do we know that? She took a picture of him and sent that picture to a number of people, showing him in a collapsed state in their kitchen. Did she call 911? No. Did she load him into a car and take him to the yard? No. What did she do? She called 2 construction guys that worked for her. They took Michael Cochran from the kitchen floor and put him on the couch, where he would remain for the rest of the day, some at least 6 hours or so. That's an unusual reaction for somebody to take with their spouse. She did, in addition to calling the construction workers, you'll hear from him, Jason Bowen, who helped move Mr. Cochran to the couch. She called a trooper friend of theirs, J.B. Hamilton. J.B. Hamilton came to the Cochran residence. He saw Michael on the couch. Michael was not conscious, and he was concerned. J.B. Hamilton is married to Stephanie Hamilton, and she is a physician's assistant. They get some medical attention. Stephanie Hamilton came to the house. She looks at Michael Cochran, and she tells her he needs to be checked. Did the defendant do that? No. Let him lay on the couch. Roughly 3 hours later, things have deteriorated to the point where Michael loses control of his bladder and urinates on himself. Did that event trigger any action by the defendant? Did it seek medical care for her husband, who's on the couch and unconscious now for a number of hours? No. She and her sister changed his clothes and left him on the couch. By 6-ish or so that evening, Michael's best friend, Chris Davis, comes to the house. Chris Davis takes charge. Says, we're going to the hospital. The defense says, oh, he don't want to go. He don't want to go. Of course, nobody could ask him because he was unconscious. Chris Davis says, we're taking him to the hospital. They do. They go to Raleigh General Hospital. But the damage has been done. You'll hear from a couple of doctors to explain the significance, but for now, just keep these numbers in mind. According to the defendant, Michael Cochran's blood glucose level was in the 140s during the day. She reports that to a couple people. He gets to Raleigh General Hospital, and it was 21. 21. That may mean nothing to you right now, but keep that number in mind. Now, Michael Cochran's mom was 10 minutes from his house. She's a retired, registered nurse. Did the defendant contact her? Oh, she did about 10 o'clock that night by text saying, they're going to have to take Michael from Raleigh General to CAMC. All the opportunities to get help to this man, and she took none of them. After being in CAMC for a few days, He's transferred to hospice. He's there roughly 5 hours and dies. His cause of death was damage to his brain caused by insulin. You'll know that because a couple of doctors will testify. A Dr. Uribe and a Dr. Krieger will tell you how the effects of insulin just basically destroyed this man's brain. Glenda Epperly, an experienced RN and a hospice nurse, said she had never seen a body come out of hospice that looked so good. This was a healthy man until she did him in. Now that answers the how. Why? Why would this happen? And why would it happen when it happened? Well, as the defense counsel informed you during questioning, the defendant had run a Ponzi scheme, a big one, where millions of dollars were taken from friends, relatives, local professionals. As many deceptions and lies as were told to her victims of the Ponzi scheme, Michael Cochran was told just as many. He did not know what was going on, but he was determined to find out because people were saying, hey, we invested in your company in this plan and we're not getting our money back. And he was frustrated. He was very frustrated. But the same excuses provided by the defendant to all of her victims in the Ponzi scheme were being provided to Michael Cochran too. It's everybody's fault under the sun. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars in their money stuck in a bank in Virginia, Bank of America. That's what she told Michael Cochran. That's what he believed. So Michael Cochran is going to straighten this out. They charter a flight from Beckley to the Bank of America branch in Lynchburg, Virginia for the 6th of February, 2019. Mysteriously, the defendant cancels that trip in early morning hours. Why was that trip so important? Because Michael Cochran and everybody else would know at that point. There is no money in the Bank of America in Virginia. There's never been any money in the Bank of America in Virginia. There are no government contracts, which is what she was selling to most of Raleigh County, it seems like. Those were fictitious things that she made up and built millions of dollars out of her victims. Now, we're not going to pretend Michael Cochran didn't get a benefit from this. He did. The defendant and her family lived a very lavish lifestyle with other people's money. And Trooper Heinzman will explain to you in an overview, because this case isn't the Ponzi scheme case. That one's over. This is the Verner case. But he'll explain to you how the defendant did this and how she was able to pull this off for so long and how she got so many people to forfeit their money to her. That was all going to blow up on February 6th. And it would have been over February 6th. But of course, the Cochrans never made it from Beckley to Lynchburg. And Michael Cochran is dead because of this. By the way, in case you've forgotten from some of your questioning, this defendant is a pharmacist. She knows about medications and drugs. Beyond that, she held herself out as a specialist in diabetic counseling. She knew the impact insulin would make. That's our case, all circumstantial. And at the end of it, we'll be asking you to find the right verdict and find this defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Thank you.
Ooh, let's take a pause. We got to take a pause for the cause. Oh my goodness. So there we have it. First opening statement of the day, part 1 of this new trial, the Ponzi scheme wife trial. Okay, so what we learned, let me say welcome back to the jury box, Catherine. Welcome back, Kathy. Welcome back, Bougie. Thank y'all for joining. Of course, I already know you guys have hit the gavel on that like button. Thank you. I'm gonna have to do that. Okay. Anywho, so what do y'all think about that opening statement from the prosecution? What did we learn? We learned already that I heard some very, it's a circumstantial case. Okay, so we're not gonna see a bunch of videos. We're not gonna have to hear no bunch of DNA testing, none of that stuff, right? It's a circumstantial case. They already saying there's no smoking gun. However, we know now, according to the prosecution, Natalie, the defendant, is a pharmacist. She's a pharmacist specialized in diabetic counseling. She has claimed at that point in time in 2019 that she was suffering from cancer and that insulin helped that. And I guess she ran out of her life-saving insulin and borrowed some from her neighbor. Same time she borrowed some insulin from her neighbor, that same day her husband, 38 years old, for all appearances and everything else, even after the autopsy, he was a healthy man. 38 young man, healthy man. And he falls out and collapses on the kitchen floor around noon, and she don't take him to the hospital. She don't take him to the hospital. She don't call 911, but she does call, according to the prosecution, she calls some construction workers, to come and pick her husband up off the kitchen floor and put him on the couch. Well, he unconscious. For some reason, it's a parade of people that all come through in and out the house, all her friends and associates. Nobody tells her to take him to the doctor. It's not that she tells her best friend that he come and say, we're going to take him to the hospital. The prosecution say his mama lived 10 minutes away. A retired nurse. She didn't call the victim, the unalived victim, in this case, Michael. She didn't call her mother-in-law and say, come check on your son. She didn't call the mother-in-law and say, we take him to the hospital. She didn't call the mother-in-law till 10 o'clock that night when they was almost moving the man to hospice. Now, that's all the state is saying. She used that borrowed insulin from her neighbor to poison him with, and then sat there and let him deteriorate to the very last moment that she could before taking him to the hospital. We learned that the cause of death in this trial is damage to brain caused by insulin. The state also set forth the motive, right? They say the motive is she didn't want to be exposed by her husband or found out by her husband about a Ponzi scheme she had been running. She didn't ran that Ponzi scheme and ran it on her family's friends, co-workers, the community, some of his family. And so they want us to, the state is saying, because of that, what she had going on, people start complaining to him because it's family and friends and co-workers, and the husband didn't know. He didn't, now the state, now that's kind of strange. He didn't know nothing about the shell company. He didn't know nothing about the Ponzi scheme. He didn't know nothing about the scam. And so he starts snooping. And when he starts snooping, they say the motive is at that moment in time, Natalie Cochran decided it was time to get rid of her husband, Michael. Okay? So that's what I gathered from that opening statement. It was a lot. It was a lot, that does not fare well as far as from opening statements for the defendant. Okay. I liked and enjoyed his opening statement. Clear, concise, to the point, short and sweet. Okay. So now we finna get into opening statements put forth by the defense. I am so interested in knowing how are they gonna how they gonna explain all these things that common sense say that you just should do? Let's see. Sorry about that.
May it please the court, counsel for the state. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, by the prosecution's account, and perhaps by some other accounts, Natalie Cochran is not a nice person. She defrauded friends, relatives, investors. She was involved in a Ponzi scheme. She cheated, she scammed. And she has paid for it. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the fact that she is perhaps a fraud and perhaps a cheat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't take the picture down. My bad.
To invite her home for Sunday dinner.
Oh, Lord. I didn't even put it on the screen. Hold on.
Into
oh, Lord. Let me start it over. My bad. Got to be more careful. It's a Monday, you guys. Okay. Let me make it on this cold Monday. All right, there we go.
Jury counts. Natalie Cochran is not a nice person. She defrauded friends, relatives, investors. She was involved in a Ponzi scheme. She cheated, she scammed.
Okay, Livin.
And she has paid for it. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the fact that she is perhaps a fraud and perhaps a cheat, and that you wouldn't perhaps want to invite her home for Sunday dinner, that you wouldn't like her, does not translate into being a murderer. This trial is not a forum on public acceptance. You don't have to like her. You don't have to say she is a great person, but you have taken the oath to judge her fairly and to give her a fair shake, a fair trial. When you took the oath, it's not just some wave of a hand. It is a solemn oath to search for the truth and to determine what really happened in this case. Now, the prosecutor presented a very nice theory, except that before that, again, I'm Matthew Victor. I represent Natalie Cochran with my co-counsel, Mr. Stanley Seldon. We represent somebody, again, who is perhaps dishonest in her financial dealings, but who didn't kill anybody, let alone her husband, her only man in her life, a man, father of her 2 children, and a man with whom she was enamored ever since she laid eyes on him in high school. She's not a murderer, as the evidence will show. Now, she is accused here by the state of West Virginia of one of the vilest crimes there is known. And I will submit to you that the state's motive in this case, as they presented to you, is absolute nonsense. The state of West Virginia is trying to tell you that my client, Natalie Cochran, who has lived with a man who was up to his eyeballs in the Ponzi scheme, somehow detected that he was on her. He was already detecting that she was committing a major fraud, and he was going to run straight to the federal government. Well, think about it, ladies and gentlemen, as you listen to the evidence. The state would want you to believe that he didn't know anything about the Ponzi scheme, didn't know anything about millions of dollars and the lavish lifestyle. He didn't know anything about this, even though the evidence will show that he was signing all these contracts, he was working on the contracts, he was signing checks, and you will see that evidence, you will hear that evidence. And all of a sudden, he found out that Natalie Cochran, his beloved wife, is a fraud and a cheat. And what was he gonna do? No, he was not gonna go and talk to her and try to resolve this case somehow, get a lawyer, or no. The evidence will show, well, at least the state's evidence will show, that she's gonna run to the federal government and turn her and her in and have the dear wife, the mother of his children, locked up in prison. Well, okay, think about that. As you listen to the evidence, be aware of the fact that she, that is Ms. Cochran, does not have to prove herself innocent. The state has the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt to demonstrate that Natalie Cochran killed her husband with premeditation, deliberation, and malice. And that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence will show the state cannot do. They cannot do it. You will see exhibits, you will see documents here, consider it all. But what comes to mind immediately is that bottle of insulin. And I will submit to you that this is a smokescreen that the state is going to present to you. You will hear expert testimony and evidence that this type of insulin could not kill anybody. And for that matter, that the amount of insulin that may have been given to Michael Cochran would not kill him. The state will not tell you exactly what happened that day. Well, they will tell you what they believe happened that day after Mr. Cochran was allegedly shot with this insulin. But what they will not tell you is that if you are shot with a injection of insulin, you're not going to drop unconscious immediately. Think about what would happen if somebody injected you with insulin. Would you react? Would you call 911? Now let's think about it. Let's also think about the fact that the evidence in this case is not exactly what the state believed you to be. Mr. Cochran was a 38-year-old man who died, and the question still remains, what did he die of? You will hear medical evidence that Mr. Cochran was not a healthy 38-year-old man. In fact, to the contrary, between the late 2017 and the time of his death in 2019, he was in the hospital 4 times. For what? For life-threatening conditions. He was a ticking bomb, the evidence will show, health-wise. He suffered from a plethora of medical conditions that could easily end up his life. What's more, you will hear the evidence that Mr. Cochran fancied himself to be a bodybuilder. He wanted to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Universe. And what did he do in that regard? Mr. Cochran has imported well, let's call it medication, from Mexico, online, from sources that were not approved by any FDA or any legitimate American government sources. And he was taking medication, steroids, that were not for human consumption. That there was, that there was some animal medication taken only by the animals. So consider that. Consider that. He was not a healthy man. He was in the hospital in 2017 for his back problems. That's maybe even disregard that. But he was again in the hospital for mold exposure with the symptoms similar to what happened to him in February of 2019. He hated the hospitals, the evidence will show. He told everybody that if they ever took him to the hospital, it would be a waste of money, and he would not want to stay in a hospital. But 2 days later, he was again in a hospital with the same conditions, even worse. Somehow he survived. His medical conditions, you will hear, involve the swelling of the brain, convulsions, perhaps epilepsy. You will hear all that evidence. He was not a healthy man. And he refused to take medications. He was pumping himself with steroids and whatever other medication there was that he could get from less than legitimate sources. And you have to consider that in arriving at your verdict. Secondly, the evidence will show that the state's medical evidence as such is going to be easily discredited by the expert evidence of people expert witnesses, who will tell you that this type of medication, what he had, could not have killed this man. And on top of that, the facts of the case are also different from what the prosecution told you. In fact, the insulin, you will hear about all this insulin. This is a smokescreen. The insulin that my client had in her possession was the insulin that Mr. and Mrs. Davis gave her repeatedly. Why? Because they had a diabetic son. And Natalie was an expert in administering that medication because their next door neighbor had a son who had diabetes 1. Sad to hear that, but that's the reality of it. It was not a one-time deal. She was in fact entitled to go to the pharmacy and get that medication, pick up the medication for Mr. and Mrs. Davis's son. So the fact that she had any insulin in her home is of no import. Furthermore, the state will present the evidence that they found a bottle of insulin in her home. We will, however, present to you that that bottle of insulin was first of all full. So nobody took that insulin. Second of all, that insulin was found in the refrigerator 4 months after Mr. Cochran's death. That insulin is completely irrelevant, as the evidence will show. Now, the state wants you to believe that Ms. Cochran, as a pharmacist, is knowledgeable of the insulin because she wanted to kill her husband. The evidence, however, will show that Ms. Cochran, as a pharmacist, is also known to have great knowledge of any other substances that could kill, undetectable, untraceable. And so consider this evidence. Let's assume that the state is right on everything. Consider the fact that this cold-blooded killer borrows a murder weapon from a neighbor to kill her husband with the insulin that involves now a couple of witnesses. Then she places that medicine in her refrigerator, the evidence of the crime, apparently, according to the state, for 4 months. And then she somehow does not use any other substances that she knows of because she is a pharmacist. That theory is absurd, ladies and gentlemen. Truly. And now, the kicker. She has an absolute power to hide the evidence. And the evidence will show that she had never cremated her husband. So he was exhumed, his body was exhumed, so that the state would prove something, which the state cannot, but at least they try. And we will submit to you that if she had cremated the late Mr. Cochran's body, there would have been no case. There would have been any case. Now, you will hear the evidence about her chemo treatment. You will hear the evidence about her health. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, after all of that, you will come to the realization that the state's case doesn't make any sense. And you will not be able to answer your own question, perhaps. What did this man die of? Certainly not the insulin injection. And the evidence will also show that Mr. Cochran, by the state's own admission, was enjoying the benefits of Ms. Cochran's fraud. Well, that's another red herring. He was involved in the Ponzi scheme. He knew about multi-million-dollar purchases, the toys, the houses, trips to Paris, trips to Hawaii, expensive, lavish lifestyle. And you have to ask yourself at the end of the case, he didn't know about it? Really? He didn't know how this money was generated? He who wrote all the contracts for the government, for the non-existing purchases? If you cannot answer these questions, then you have to acquit the defendant. This is a complex case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. But it's built by the state of West Virginia on conjectures and innuendos. It is rich on spurious conclusions and speculations, but it's thin on facts. And glaringly lacking in motive and the evidence necessary to prove that my client killed her husband. At the end of the case, we will ask you to find her not guilty. Thank you.
Ooh.
Members of the jury,
Wait a minute, let's pause. Ooh, that's all. That's what I'm gonna say right now, because I literally was very doubtful of how could they come back and rebuttal against what the state has said, because it just didn't make sense. But I do believe, and if you guys in a position where you can type and let me know what y'all think. I think the defense actually put on a good opening statement. It started off kind of shaky and weird when he was calling his, acknowledging the fact that, hey, my client may not be a nice person. She might be a scammer. She might be a thief. You may not want to invite her over for dinner. Let her in your house. I was like, dang, he gonna have to get to the good parts. But he eventually got there. one of the key points to me is I question my own self. Are you able to be in a marriage with somebody and be a business partner with them and don't know they running a $2.5+ million scam? You signing contracts or fake contracts you didn't know. So that's what the defense saying, that the victim knew about it. It was no threat of him outing her. He knew about it. He played a part in it. So that's not the motive, right? And then I like the point he made. That's where he said about the defendant by being a pharmacist alone. Why would she use something when she had at her hands, at her convenience, a plethora, to use one of his words, of different drugs and stuff like that she could have used to unalive him that would go unnoticed. Winter says, that steroid use may be a serious question because that will cause damage to the brain and body. Absolutely. Another great point. That he brought out the fact that now that the man used foreign, not USDA approved steroids. That could have been the culprit. Now it kind of got a little weird when he said the man went to the hospital 4 times for life-threatening conditions, and then he came back and said one of the times he went to the hospital for back problems. And then he said mold. That was kind of tricky the way he tried to make it sound and what he came back with. But hey, they just getting started, right? Another fact that he laid out there that made me say, was he said that the bottle of insulin that was found in the house was found 4 months later after he'd already passed away, and that the bottle was full. That's interesting. And quite honestly, when I'm just looking at it, wow, that's what I would say. If she a pharmacist and got access to insulin and all that kind of stuff at the pharmacy, she could have easily, she already stealing millions of dollars from people. We already know she's morally bankrupt. Why not just steal some insulin from the pharmacy? Why even go borrow something from the neighbor, whereas someone can say, hey, I just gave her some insulin? And if she's smart enough to pull off a Ponzi scheme for a while to fool all these people, family, friends, co-workers, church members, and all that, then she's not a dummy. Pharmacy keeps tabs of the meds. Correct. But she could have doctored up some stuff. She could have put a little extra insulin on somebody else's thing. You know what I'm saying? Where there's a will, there's a way living. Right? But absolutely, I get what you're saying. Maybe she didn't want to start no problem, kick up no problems at the job at the pharmacy and get that involved. Makes sense to me. So it's let me see if I see anything else that stuck out to me. Now, it was some good points. I feel like I'm absolutely amazed and shocked that he was able to come back with some good points that made me say, ooh. I say, oh my. So again, it seemed kind of interesting, you guys. This is part 1 of the new trial. Watch, we're starting a daytime trial. The Ponzi, hold on, let me see. The Ponzi scheme wife trial. Out of is West Virginia versus Natalie Cochran. Natalie Cochran is accused of unaliving her husband, Michael, who was 38 years old at the time. They had 2 children. They lived an affluent lifestyle by all, accounts. Part of that, most of that was afforded by the fact that she was running a Ponzi scheme that she has been federally charged for and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. That's already been taken care of. And now They're trying her for the death of Michael. They say she poisoned him by way of insulin. Okay, so it seemed real interesting. Let's get into these first witnesses. Let's go. We rocking and rolling. Trial watch with Demetri. You're now a part of the Lane jury.
Part or stage of this case is the introduction of the evidence through witnesses and exhibits. This is what lawyers and judges call the heart of any trial. You are to determine the facts of this case solely from the evidence. As jurors, it is your duty to listen carefully to and observe closely all witnesses and evidence to assess.
Welcome back to the Little Lane Jury Box, Jill's Comfort Zone. Thank you for joining and supporting this content. Welcome back, Pretty Shani. Thank you for joining. Okay, if you're just coming in, you have not missed much, just the opening statements. I will be posting those separately on the on my channel after this live. Okay, that's something new I'm gonna start doing, is posting up the different segments.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. You swear.
And there's also a playlist.
The whole truth and nothing but
First
the truth,
witness.
So help you God.
I do.
You may have a seat right there. Mr. Truman, if you will give me a prompt at the proper time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You wish for me to proceed with both instructions?
No, sir.
Go right ahead.
You are Robert Heinzman.
Yes, sir, I am.
Tell us your background in education and employment, please.
My name's Robert Heinzman, and it's probably best if I go chronologically from my first professional job to present to help keep things in order. I joined the United States Marine Corps in 1989 and got discharged in 1993 off of active duty, and joined the Beckley Police Department here in Beckley as a law enforcement officer. I worked at the Beckley Police Department 4.5 years and applied for the West Virginia State Police, and then was hired by the West Virginia State Police in 1997. I stayed with the state police until the year 2000. I left law enforcement and went into doing private investigation for about a year for a local attorney here in Beckley. In 2001, I went back into law enforcement, worked at the Bluefield Police Department for 2 years. I was doing that while I was finishing an undergraduate degree at Bluefield State College. Finished that in 2003, went back into the private sector, came back to Beckley, worked for a law firm here doing civil investigation. I did that for about 3 years, and I was then recruited by a former law enforcement officer that I worked with, who was now working with the West Virginia State Insurance Commission's fraud unit. It was a new unit that had been created in West Virginia around 2015, 2016. So I joined that unit and did insurance fraud investigation for about 6 years until the state police had called me and then recruited me to come back to the state police because they wanted to stand up a financial crimes unit inside their Bureau of Criminal Investigation. They didn't have anybody doing that. They needed someone with some experience doing fraud investigations. So I went to the state police in 2013 and stayed there till 2019. In 2019, I applied for law school here in West Virginia and went to moved to Morgantown, attended law school starting in 2019. Law school is 3 years long, so I did that for 3 years. And then after law school, I took the bar in 2023, was accepted to the state bar. I'm now a practicing attorney in Morgantown, West Virginia. I opened an office there, and I'm in my second year in private practice in Morgantown. And that's my storied career, part of it.
Yeah, but what did you hear for today?
Was this case your last case in law enforcement?
This was the last criminal investigative case that I worked before
All it says
law
the
enforcement community.
he a detective. Okay.
Your Honor, I ask that this be marked as States 1 for
Very well.
identification.
All that being said, and I still don't know exactly what is his role yet. I guess detective on the case, the murder case, or the Ponzi case.
Your Honor, I believe it'd be appropriate to read the 2 cautionary instructions at this time.
All right, members of the jury, normally the court would read to you what's called the jury charge at the end of all the evidence and before the closing arguments. Sometimes during the trial, the court must read to you a limiting or cautionary instruction, and that time has arisen. So I read to you these 2 instructions. The court instructs the jury that evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts by the accused is not to be considered to prove her character in order to show that she acted in conformity therewith. However, the jury may consider such evidence for other purposes, such as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, identity, and absence of mistake or accident as to the crimes charged. The court has or will take judicial notice of court documents generated by the United States District Court, Southern District of West Virginia. That is, the court has or will take as a fact that the litigation in the United States District Court, Southern District of West Virginia, occurred based upon the determination of sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. You are instructed, however, that you may or may not accept that fact as conclusive. All right, you may continue now, Mr. Truitt.
Your Honor, before we begin, the defense counsel will be shown the exhibit so we are on the same page.
Sure.
Show it to ma'am. We can see both.
Very true, Winter. Very, very true.
Bob, I hand you what's been marked for identification in the State's Exhibit 1. Can you review and identify it, please?
And we literally still don't know exactly what his role was yet.
Yes, sir. These would be the federal documents. The financial crime in this case was charged through the federal government. So these are the federal documents that certify that an agreement was made by Ms. Cochran to plead to certain financial crimes, federal financial crimes, to resolve the financial crime that occurred with this investigation.
This was your last criminal investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And State's Exhibit 1 reflects the finality of that investigation for that part of the case. Is that a fair assessment?
It does.
Tell us some background as to what that case was about. What's a Ponzi scheme?
Let me start by saying that I just didn't go from law enforcement into doing financial crimes.
Oh Lord, he's gonna be long-winded.
Background. Let's just answer the question.
I'll give the witness some leeway.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
All right, y'all. I had to cut in because this attorney, I might just like him after all. Okay. I was just like, oh my God, is this man gonna pre-qualify every question that he answers? Baby, that attorney said, I object to him being long-winded. continue. I will not interrupt for at least the next 10 minutes, okay?
I have training in financial crimes. I'm a certified fraud examiner through the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. I have a master's in forensic accounting. During the course of that education and training, couched with the experience of conducting financial crimes over that 13-year period with the state police and with the Insurance Commission's fraud unit, as well as some other financial crimes that I worked during my uniform law enforcement days. I come to learn about the different various types of fraud and financial crimes that occur in society. So when I say fraud, or I say financial crime, or I would say maybe a scam, I may use some terminology that's more or less synonymous as I discuss this. So if you hear me say fraud or scheme or scam, I'm generally talking about the same thing. The financial crime aspect of that term would apply to the violation of law or the criminal charge. So when we say a Ponzi scheme, we're talking about a type of fraud. And what a Ponzi scheme is, the term Ponzi is a name coined after a con man in the 1920s. So Ponzi itself means nothing, but the Ponzi scheme is a methodology of fraud. And it's what that is it's an illegal business practice where someone would induce a person or a victim to invest money into a business, and then they would continue to get investors to invest money in the business, but later investors' money would be paid to earlier investors' money, and then that cycle would just continue over and over. So as new investors would invest in the business, then monies from that investor would be used to pay earlier investors. Now, the investment could be a number of things, but that basically is what a Ponzi scheme is, taking new investor money and paying earlier investors on money that they were supposed to receive from their earlier investment.
What do you look for when you suspect a Ponzi?
Welcome back, Lady T. First witness on the stand.
Ponzi schemes are generally involving in business. So when you're looking for certain red flags that may, with many scams and schemes and frauds, with the Ponzi scheme, if the investment opportunity, the very first indicator is that it sounds too good to be true. When that sounds too good to be true, that's typically the initial indicator or red flag. There may be promises that this investment is very low risk. You know, people who want to take their hard-earned money and invest in something to get money back want to make sure that they're not going to lose money. So there's typically a high reward with a low risk involved with inviting or inducing someone to invest in a company or a business. And then there's opportunities to reinvest that money. You know, if you've earned this money, and there's opportunities to reinvest. So there's different red flags, and they're not all, the indicators aren't always present in all scams or schemes, but those are some of the ones with the Ponzi scheme.
In this particular case, how did you become aware that there was an investigation to be opened?
This investigation opened from a businessman here in Beckley who was who was part of this overall financial crime or scheme.
I'm going to object. Can we approach the bench on this one?
Sure.
Welcome back, Candy Cane. So why are they doing their approachments and stuff? And this, now let me tell you, we didn't see, why didn't them that the light in the courts was bad? It was bothering their eyes. He didn't objected 2 times. Okay, he active. For those of you guys coming in, this is the state of West Virginia versus Natalie Cochran. Natalie Cochran, a pharmacist married to Michael Cochran, and also supposed to have some type of outside business, which they found out and she was convicted of running a Ponzi scheme. The state alleges that Natalie Cochran in 2019 poisoned Michael Cochran, her husband. He was 38. She poisoned him with insulin. The state is saying that the motive is because he started snooping around, that the husband didn't know nothing about the Ponzi scheme, was unaware of the scam. And once he started becoming aware and snooping around, he was going to turn his wife in. So that was the motive. The means was supposed to be poisoning by insulin. Okay. She's already been charged and convicted for the Ponzi scam. Literally, 11-year sentence. This is the murder case.
A local businessman who was involved with Miss Cochran's business called a state trooper or ran into a state trooper that he knew and asked, he was having problems with.
I'm going to object to hearsay, John.
This is Dave. I think we need to cut to the chase.
Okay. You opened an investigation.
Yes,
And you determined that the defendant was in fact operating a Ponzi scheme.
yes. The defendant had a business and was operating a Ponzi scheme.
In summary fashion, what was the overview of the business that she pretended to have?
The business purported to be a supplier of durable goods and other materials to government contracts. So the federal government would need to buy supplies or goods. They would put out an announcement for businesses to bid on these contracts to fulfill their needs. And then federal contractors, businesses would bid on these contracts, get awarded the contract. Then the business should supply the good to the government and get paid for the good they provided. That was the purpose of the business. That's what the business purported to be.
And you did an extensive investigation that culminated in the federal conviction that you have at State's Exhibit 1, correct?
Yes.
Now, the defense has floated the theory that Michael Cochran was up to his eyeballs in this Ponzi scheme. From your investigation, do you have any evidence that would support that?
Welcome to the Box Wild Card.
Let
Thank
me
you for joining.
state by saying the business itself, in its appearance and in its existence, was legitimate. The business was legitimately set up. It was registered with the state of West Virginia. It was registered with the federal government. So Michael Cochran was aware of the business, and because he participated with what he believed was a legitimate business.
I'm going to object, Judge, as to what Mr. Cochran may have believed. That's calls for speculation.
You can continue, please.
So during our investigation, we reviewed many financial records, many documents to determine if any government contracts existed. Any federal government contracts have been awarded to this business, and we could not find any contracts whatsoever where the government had awarded these. Now, there was one state of West Virginia contract that was that Mr. Cochran had, or the business had bid on, but they never fulfilled that contract. So beyond this one contract, there were never any contracts that we could find to support what the business purported to do. Also, in reviewing these documents, there were applications made to financial institutions, and many of those documents only bore the name of Mrs. Cochran in the business, and those documents would purport that she was a 100% owner of the business. So there was a suggestion or an indication that Mr. Cochran didn't know about certain documents that because he wasn't listed on certain documents. In addition to that, the victim investors of this financial crime were given reasons. They were given information to induce their investment. They were given information regarding them getting their investment money returned to them, the money they should have earned on their investment. So the information that was false or deceptive that was being given to victim investors of the business was the exact same information that was being given to Mr. Cochran when he would question why the business hadn't received its money from the contracts. He did participate in looking for contracts for the business to bid on, but that was about the extent of his involvement. He would search the internet and the federal websites to identify federal contracts that the business could bid on. But the structure was that Mrs. Cochran would go out and secure those contracts from the government. So as far as Mr. Cochran knew, based on the records that we reviewed, the interviews that we did, he believed that they had obtained contracts and that they would be receiving money for these contracts. So he would ask the same questions that investors would ask: where's the money for this contract? And so that would indicate that he was not involved, because he's asking the same questions regarding monies and profits.
In your investigation, what do you base the fact that he was asking the same questions as the investigators? What do you base the conclusion that he was asking the same questions as the investors?
During our investigation, like we reviewed many records, we consulted many agencies, we obtained records through subpoenas or search warrants, and we were able to get text message communication held by investors, and also as a result of some subpoenas and search warrants, we were able to.
I'm going to object to any third-party involvement in this and what the other parties have done. We have not been provided with that evidence, and the witness is testifying about something that is absolutely hearsay.
Sustained.
You executed some search warrants and subpoenas for cell phone records, correct?
That's correct.
Did that include the defendant and messages back and forth between her and her husband?
That is correct.
Did you use that information to reach any conclusion as to Michael Cochran's knowledge as to what was going on with their reported businesses?
We did.
How did you verify that the conversations by text were actually between the defendant and Michael Cochran? How did you authenticate those documents?
Well, the holder of those records, we would issue a subpoena or to AT&T, for example, may hold business or phone records. We would issue legal subpoenas for those to get those records, and then we review those records.
Well, I mean, how did you know that they were communications between Mr. Cochran and Mrs. Cochran?
Well, Mr. Cochran had an established phone number. Mrs. Cochran had an established cell phone number. So the records that we requested and reviewed were those cell phone records. We also received records from investors, victim investors of the business, and would compare those to the same communication. So we had multiple text message communication, some email communication that we reviewed to come to our conclusions.
Leading right up to the 5th of February, 2019, you saw text messages between the defendant and her husband?
Yes.
What was the plan? How did it end up that they were going to fly to Lynchburg, Virginia? From your investigation, how do you know that?
Let me say this scheme began in 2017. So it had gone.
I'm going to object. The witness is not answering the questions.
I think he's trying to explain, and I'll give him leeway in that regard. You may continue, Mr. Johnson.
This Ponzi scheme began in 2017, mid 2017, And as it matured, more investors gave more money. There were other monies that were obtained through some loans that the Ms. Cochran would obtain. But there was still this need to return money back to the investors. The investors were still expecting money to be returned. The problem with the Ponzi scheme is it's short-lived.
Now I'm going to object. This question was asked and answered at least once.
Yeah, I think maybe we are getting a little far afield now. Perhaps another question would be in order, Mr. Tritton.
Thank you. Let's just explore one other area. From your investigation, is there a single shred of evidence that supports the defendant's theory that Michael Cochran was going to turn his wife into the federal government?
No, sir, there was not.
Questions the state has at this time. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Heinzman, I understand that you were involved in every aspect of the federal investigation of Natalie Cochran. Is that right?
I left the state police before the indictment, before she was indicted,
Before the federal indictment.
before the actual indictment occurred. But the information that was obtained to bring that about, yes.
Prior to that, you were involved in every aspect of that investigation.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you wouldn't know what the federal government alleged in the indictment?
No, I do know what they alleged in the indictment.
Well, is it true that the federal government alleged that both Mr. Cochran and Ms. Cochran got involved in a scheme, but Mr. Cochran died, what the federal government called unexpectedly in 2019. So she was the only one who got indicted. Is that true?
I wouldn't not characterize it as such.
No.
Did you see the forfeiture documents that the federal government filed against the Cochrans?
Yes, some of those.
Some of those. And in those documents, federal government alleges that they were both involved in the scheme, right?
Without reviewing the documents, I don't know.
All right, we'll come back to this. Who is Colonel Jan Cahill?
Colonel Cahill would be the superintendent of the state police during my last employment with the state police.
I'd like to mark this.
All right, if you'll present it to the clerk, please.
As the defendant's exhibit number 1. I have provided a copy to the
Approach briefly, you want?
Yes, you may.
So why they do they sidebar, baby? They didn't had a couple of sidebars, 5 million objections, and they ain't the first state witness. Okay. However, the point I want to, it's a good time to say that I really believe that the only point that reason they putting this guy on the stand, right, is to demonstrate for the state that Michael, the victim, didn't know about the Ponzi scheme. He wasn't a part of the Ponzi scheme. Because their biggest deal and their motive is that the reason why she unalived him was to keep her husband from turning her in. And the defense biggest point is he knew about it. He participated. So it would be no reason for her to unalive him because of that motive. So that's the reason why he up here, because it's not a matter of asking about that Ponzi scheme or even retrying it. She already been convicted of it. She done been tried and convicted. Why she walking like that?
It's been marked as defendant's exhibit number
That's
one.
weird how that
You tell
court is set up.
jury what that document is.
This is a communication, a letter that I prepared and sent to a federal investigator.
That was done in April of 2019, right?
Yes. It's dated April 2019.
And the subject of your correspondence was the Tactical Solution Group and the Technology Management Solutions. Would you tell us what those two organizations were?
Technology Management Solutions, or also known as TMS, was a West Virginia company formed in 2013 by Michael Cochran and Natalie Cochran.
How about the other one?
Tactical Solutions Group, also referred to as TSG, doing business as TSG, is the company that was formed in 2017 by Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran, which the Ponzi scheme ran through.
All right. Now, looking at this document, is it true that you allege as the mode of operation that the Cochrans, plural, Cochrans, have been soliciting contract investors to invest funds into their company to be applied to government contracts? Plural. Cochrans.
Which paragraph, Mr. Victor?
Mode of operation, first page.
Yes, I see that.
So they were both involved in the soliciting government contracts, right? According to you.
Well, when this correspondence was written, we began the investigation 1 month prior to this correspondence, so we were still fact finding. We didn't conclude that Mr. Cochran was or wasn't involved that early. We went into it as if both were involved. We didn't know. We hadn't collected all the evidence, reviewed all the documents and things of that nature. So
Mr. Heinzman,
at that time, it still does list them as Cochrans.
Mr. Heinzman, this investigation has been going on since 2017. Is that right?
No, sir.
When did you start this investigation, sir?
In 2019.
2019. So 2 months before months or so before the federal indictment?
The indictment wasn't in April.
Okay. So in 2019, you're still speculating whether they're both involved in this or whether just one of them is involved?
By the time the federal indictment occurred, we had concluded that Mr. Cochran did not know. We had spoken with witnesses, we had reviewed documents, we had got all of our records, we had subpoenaed in from third-party record holders.
Yes.
So it would be, no, we were open-minded. We didn't know to what extent either, or if they were, we were still collecting records.
Where is in this document that you are telling Colonel Cahill that this investigation is still in its infancy?
This letter is not addressed to Colonel Cahill, first of all. And I don't understand that really what your question is.
Well, tell us where in this document, written to Jeff, whoever Jeff is, does it say that this investigation has just started and we're collecting more data, and
The-
we're going to talk to more witnesses.
The document says, Jeff, pleasure speaking with you this morning. This is a document that I prepared following a phone call with a special agent of the federal government who I had reached out to assist with getting records from federal government databases. And I was providing him the information he had requested so that he could do his search.
But I didn't ask you that, Mr. Heinzman. I asked you to show me in this document where it says that we have just started the investigation of the Cochrane's, plural. Where is it?
The document would not state that because it's not relevant to this document,
It wasn't relevant.
to this document, to
I see.
this special agent.
But you described in detail in this letter the mode of the operation of those two organizations, and you used the word Cochrane's, plural, and now you also described how this alleged fraud is being perpetrated. Is that right?
This working document does describe some of the information we had learned at that point. Yes.
Then you also wanted to see the list of any contracts or any other documents that deal with the Cochrane's. Page 2, what we need. Cochrane's, not just Natalie Cochrane.
Pause for the cause. Thank you for that, Cash App. You have a wonderful day too. Thank you for the support. Cochrane's, not Cochrane. Let's continue. Thank you.
Is that right?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
I was trying to explain all this earlier, but
Well,
you
explain it to
objected
me
and
like I'm 3 years old. Do you have in the what we need section of this document the statement that we need all the documents, date, numbers, dates, details, payments to TSG and or the Cochrane's, again plural? Does it say that in your letter or not?
it does.
It does. How about in the mode of operation of this alleged fraud? When, and I'm reading from the top paragraph, 5th line. When maturity date occurs, TSG Cochrane's notify investors of funds being in, but then offer them a partial payment. Fair to say that you use the word Cochrane's again?
Ciao.
Yes, I use the word Cochrane's again, referring to the Cochrane's business, TSG and or TMS,
Okay.
Technology Solutions Group, Technology Management Solutions.
You testified that it is your, I guess, conclusion that Mr. Cochrane didn't know anything about what Ms. Cochrane was doing in terms of the fraud and the Ponzi scheme, right?
That's not accurate, no.
Okay. What did Mr. Cochrane, well, illegitimate part of the business. Legitimate part of the business, you testified that Mr. Cochrane was involved in, right?
Mr. Cochrane was involved to the extent that he did certain things. With
Like
the
what?
business. He would help locate contracts. He would do online internet searching of federal databases for government contracts that were available for bid from contractors. He would identify those contracts and provide them to Mrs. Cochran, who then would order those contracts or bid on those contracts so they could be awarded those contracts.
And he distanced himself from that point on, from anything to do with the contracts, right?
That is exactly what it appears. But not, that's
Okay.
not all inclusive though. So.
All right. Now, have you, in your thorough investigation of this case, talked to the children of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran?
No.
Well, why not? They were adult by now.
Well, at the time they were children, they had nothing to do with the business. So we weren't.
Would it surprise you that if I told you that they observed their parents work on the federal contracts? That is, the father worked on the federal contracts while the mother was reading a newspaper or a book?
No, we know that. We know that exactly.
Well, wait a minute. So Mr. Cochran is working on those contracts. My client is sitting peacefully reading a book, and you're telling this jury that he had no knowledge of these contracts?
I'm not telling the jury that. I've said that he knew about the contracts that he was led to believe were bid on by their business.
Okay.
We spoke with many witnesses who would see both the Cochrans on the internet looking.
Mr. Heisman, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in any other witnesses. I'm interested in this particular witness as a son or a daughter of the Cochrans. You don't know anything about what happened in the household of the Cochrans when Mr. Cochran was working on those contracts, do you?
We never interviewed the children. We never were in the house while they were working on contracts to observe what he did. So the answer would be no.
Now, this fraud resulted in what the prosecution described here as a lavish lifestyle for the Cochrans. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, let's start with the property that the Cochrans all of a sudden acquired. They had 3 homes, right?
Yes.
So were those homes acquired simultaneously, or were they purchased during, one after another?
Based on my best memory, because I did not bring any asset schedules up with me, they were purchased at different times.
Okay. And they were not the cheapest of properties, were they?
No, they were not.
What did Mr. Cochran do for a living, sir?
Mr. Cochran's profession or occupation was he was an IT or internet technology specialist. He dealt with networking, setting up IT and networking. That's what his training and certification was. And that's what the business technology management solution would have also done. Install wiring, phone lines, computer lines, network things.
What was his job? Where did he derive his income from?
Doing that from 2013 to 2017. He also worked for Workforce West Virginia, either as a salaried employee or a subcontractor, doing just that networking and internet support for them.
Well, how much money was he making a year? Do you know?
Which year?
Well, let's say 2013.
I don't think we pulled his wages back to 2013.
All right, 2017.
That I can give you. His last reported wages, his last reported wages were in 2013, the second quarter of 2013.
Right. So you really don't know how much money this man was making from any source to give us an estimate as to how much money the family made.
We looked at the Cochran's personal bank accounts.
Yeah.
for their business bank accounts.
Well,
And we found sources of income. The focus of our investigation was sources of income from these federal contracts and
Right.
federal government.
and I'm trying to, Natalie Cochran was a pharmacist.
Yes,
Her income was about 120 grand a year. Wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
All right. But his income, as we sit here today before the jury, we still cannot identify. Can we? His individual income.
To a certain point, we can. Yes, we can. Can't provide you numbers, but we can.
Huh?
We see what was legitimate income. We see what was not
Okay.
legitimate income.
Was his income, even combined with Natalie Cochran, such that allowed the purchase of 3 real estate properties that would go into thousands of dollars?
Can you
And more specifically,
clarify the 3 properties you're referring to?
property on 219 North Eisenhower Drive, property at 210 Parkwood Drive, property at 433 4H Lake Drive, all subject to subsequent forfeiture.
Yes, the last one, the home on 4H Lake Road, that home was held by them before the Ponzi scheme began. The other 2 properties were purchased with proceeds from the Ponzi schemes during the period of the Ponzi scheme.
And one day, Ms. Cochran sits at home and her husband walks in and says, honey, we just got the property with thousands of dollars. Or she walks in and says, honey, we just got the property worth thousands of dollars. And he says, what to it? Wouldn't it be surprising to you, Mr. Heinzman, that all that lavish lifestyle was sudden and enormous, and any reasonable person such as Mr. Cochran would ask where the money came from? Wouldn't that be the case?
That's a mischaracterization of our investigation. And,
Okay.
and I don't know what your question.
Then the answer is no.
Would I be surprised?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Well, no. Well, would you be surprised? Your wife walked in with a new real estate that she just purchased for X thousands of dollars. Wouldn't you want to question where she got that property? Unless you knew what the source of that income was. Would that be right?
I don't know.
Don't know. Well, all of a sudden, Mr. Cochran can afford a 1965 Shelby Cobra replica, an antique car, thousands of dollars. He drives in front of the house and says, honey, I just got me a nice little car. Wouldn't that be a question mark for anybody in the family where that money came from?
I don't know. I know where it came from.
Well,
I don't know what people in the family believed.
okay. Well, then we have a Yamaha motorcycle, 2017. 2014 B-Tex dump trailer. Another Yamaha motorcycle. Polaris model. That's, I take it as another motorcycle. Another big trailer. A Yamaha Timberwolf. Honda Rubicon. 2 diamond earrings. One of those earrings was like $14,000, wasn't it? His gift to Natalie.
What was the purchase date of it?
It's like $14,000.
The purchase date?
The earrings, the jewelry.
Purchase date. What year?
I think it was 2018.
19.
2018.
18. And yes, that would be derived from proceeds from the Ponzi scheme as well.
That's right. So he has all that money at his disposal, and he doesn't know where that money comes from, having no identifiable job.
He believed it came from a business called TSG that they ran together, getting federal contracts.
And you believe that? That's your opinion.
The evidence points in that
The evidence?
direction.
All right.
Let's stop at this juncture. I hate to interrupt cross-examination, but we do need a comfort break. We've gone on a little too far. I want to take a brief recess at this time. We'll break for about 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Dang, I've been talking my butt off, right? Hold on, let me not put. I'm talking my butt off. So I might start calling there. And welcome to the Little Ain't Jury Box. You gotta chill. Why she's smiling? Because she loving the job her attorney is putting on. Okay. Well, of course, I say, baby, her attorney is aggressive, like a little French bulldog, right? Right, Demetria. I'm objecting from the laundry room. Connie say she'll object. Speculation. My God. And irrelevant. I wanted to put irrelevant, but I couldn't remember how to spell it. Okay. You got a chill came in hot talking about she don't trust her face. Mind you, for me, even though it's very bulldogish and even though it's very aggressive, I would want an attorney like this, okay? And I think he's doing a great job. Even, it may seem irrelevant and crazy, but I think he's doing a great job of attacking the motivation part. The more and more they chip away at the fact or the fact that, no. What's the word? The more and more they chip away at what the state is saying, right? About the motive. That she was scared that Michael, who did not know nothing, was going to turn her in. Because he was so innocent. The more and more they chip away from that, the less and less motive she has. So it's a good job, right? But it is like, wow. It's so weird to see one side be so aggressive and the other side not, right? It's like swing or something.
That's from the state, Your Honor.
Yeah, I couldn't remember how to spell it. That's why they get.
All right, bring in the jury, please.
All right, let's go. Thank y'all for supporting this content. Sometimes this testimony is tedious. I personally love testimony from the family and the friends and the eyewitnesses myself. But hey, we got to get all of it, right? But I think she was smiling because she liked the performance her attorney putting on. Oh, no. This is what I was going to say. One part that is strange, and you guys riddle me this. One point the defense was making didn't make any sense to me, right? Because at the end of the day, wouldn't it be that the government, of course, would investigate both parties, the husband and the wife, the business partners? Of course, they investigated both, but that's irrelevant about his part of it or knowing it because they didn't indict him. They investigated both, plural, Cochrans, but only Natalie Cochran, no S, no plural, got indicted. I think the prosecution attorney should have said that. What they waiting on? Oh, they waiting for the jury to come in. All right, we continuing.
Mr. Hyman, I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 2 and tell us whether you know what this is.
No, Mr. Victor, I can't say I know what this is.
You don't know? Does it say PO Box 667 for tactical solution and gives the address of 4334 H Lake Road, Daniels, West Virginia? Would that be the address of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran's house?
That is the address of their house.
Right? And now they've been assigned a PO Box number 667 for that address. True? You can look at the very top of the document to just see PO Box 667. Don't you? Yes or no?
This document does say box number 667.
All right.
However, it doesn't have any dates on it.
No, Mr.
Okay.
Hyman.
Okay, I'm
Does it
just,
say PO Box 667 for that particular address?
I want to answer the questions intelligently, but I need to
Well, you
know.
can answer that on redirect.
Okay.
Does it list PO Box 667 for that home address of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran?
It lists 2 PO boxes here,
All
so.
right. Well, then
So
let's start
yes,
with
667 is one of
667.
those.
All right. And who is the customer on the front page?
Technical Solutions Group LLC.
All right. And then there is PO Box 782, also listed on that front page, right?
Yes,
And that is, who is the customer for that?
that says Michael Cochran.
All right. And on page 2, PO Box 667 is assigned to Tactical Solution Group, right?
Yes,
And then it says individual right after that in like little brackets, and it says Michael Cochran, right?
did you say blue brackets?
No, it's a little bracket, man.
Yes, that says Michael Cochran there.
And PO Box 782 is, again, Michael Cochran as a customer.
Yes,
Now, may I retrieve the exhibits? Oh, by the way, I moved for the admission of defendant's exhibit number 1, if I forgot, and also number 2.
Any objection, Mr. Truman? No objection either. All right, defendant's exhibits numbers 1 and 2 will be admitted into evidence.
May I retrieve the exhibits, please? So would you agree with me, sir, that all the mail that comes to the tactical solution, the tactical solution group comes to the PO box owned by Michael Cochran. And he has access to it, obviously. True?
no,
No? Okay. One of these companies dealt with firearms. True?
Yes, sir.
Military equipment. True?
Purportedly, yes, sir.
With my clients, do you know from your thorough investigation of this case, what is my client's experience with firearms and military gear?
I don't believe your client has any experience with firearms or military gear that I'm aware of.
However, Mr. Cochran seems to have plenty of experience with that, right?
I think he was a fan of those things. I don't think he ever served in the military.
No, he was a fan of the military equipment.
The persona, yes.
Now, he is actually listed as the partner in both of these firms, right?
Yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, let's see. Well, let's start with something different. Registration status that is registered with, I believe, the Secretary of State. May I have this marked as defendant's sequential exhibit?
Child, I'm getting about ready to fast forward him. Okay, well, good. But everybody has a right to a fair trial and a vigorous defense.
3.
Let me be patient.
To turn to page 2 and tell the jury what the document says.
Dang, I can't believe they kept this witness on the stand for so long.
The documents, page 2 of 5, is a printout. What all do you want me to read?
Well, let me ask you this. Isn't it the
All right, can we make a poll of the jury? Can we fast forward this man, because all he's telling us is that the man on the stand gonna keep saying that the government already ruled out the husband for being a part of the scam. They didn't indict the man. The defense keep trying to prove that the victim kept spending money. We get it. Girl, they kept him on the stand for a long time. Boom. I asked for a poll of the jury, but then I made an executive decision. Okay. So, yeah. There's that. So I moved it to after a lunch break, about an hour or so ahead, with him doing all the same thing with that paperwork. And so now we'll finish. They're going to wrap it up. And why is that lady from the why is that lady try to find a ride so you can get essentials? Yeah, when they bring my son home, I probably go to the grocery store real quick to get some water and stuff. I don't never be prepared for this, but I just don't believe we get no 5 inches of snow in Houston. I ain't gonna believe it till I see it. I just don't believe it. You can't make me believe it. But nobody asking none of the Lit Lane jury box that was here for that last grandmother, the Forget for Granny trial. None of y'all see that her little friend is up in them. Look at her sitting behind that lady. They look just like that woman friend from her church group.
Thank you.
Redirect Mr. Truman.
Thank you. Defendants one, please. Anyone's been admitted as defendants exhibit 1. That's your letter to Jeff?
Yes, it is.
Okay. April 1st of 2019. When did you open this investigation?
March 8th, I believe was when we opened it.
Did you open it as soon as Trooper Marsh talked to you about it?
No, I had 2 conversations with Trooper Marsh. The initial call in which he tried to explain that he had a situation he didn't know how to deal with, and he gave me some, and that was on March 8th, and he gave me some initial facts. And I said, well, I need more information. So he went back to his complainant, the local business person, who then gave him more information. And I spoke with Trooper Marsh on March 11th. It was after my discussion with him on March 11th that we started exploring the opening of the investigation into the.
So after March 11th, you'd had roughly 3 weeks before you wrote this letter. Had you done any investigation before then?
That was part of the research and investigative efforts coordinating with the special agent of the federal government.
Did you know much about the Cochran's business as of April 1st of 2019?
No, we were still collecting factual records, identifying people. We were collecting information. We made no assumptions of who was guilty or not guilty of anything. It had the appearance of a legitimate business. So that was early in the investigation. It's our responsibility to collect information as part of that investigation, and that is part of those evidence or information collecting efforts, that correspondence. Simply put, the agent asked me to request the information I was seeking from him on department letterhead, and that's why it has the superintendent's name and the letterhead of the agency.
Okay. You were soliciting assistance?
Yes.
And explaining what you were going to try to accomplish.
He was a federal government special agent. These were federal government contracts. So we needed a federal resource to explore contracts down the federal database.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as on grounds of relevancy. I think we've been through this.
I should have fast forward all the way through
There's
him.
nothing to do with the murder.
Oh my God.
Anyone who's been admitted as defendants exhibit 3. Is that a document from the West Virginia Secretary of State?
No, it's not.
Is it a private company that printed that information?
The website is the federal registration database where you would go in and make application for federal licensing and federal registration is what that appears to be.
Well, it's a private company, isn't it? This particular website. That's not a government agency, is it? It's not a .gov.
I'm going to object to the legal nature of these questions.
Is it a .gov address?
No, sir.
With all the questions about what Michael Cochran knew and didn't know,
Do you have any evidence that he knew that this was a fraud being carried on?
No.
That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
Recross.
Boom. That's the bottom line.
No,
He didn't
no,
get
thank
indicted.
you. Sir, you may shut down. Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Moving right along. Thank y'all for being long suffering. Because, baby, that was a long. All right, and this is why I do my trial watches after they start so we can fast forward. Second witness. Let's see who it is.
Corporal Fry comes back. Now we'll leave the equipment for back on. Okay. We can do it, but we don't want to offend the bailiff.
Let's see who the second witness is.
Right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may have a seat right there. Deputy Fry, before you sit down, we need for you to turn on the equipment again. The helmet. Okay.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Jennifer Davis.
And make sure you're speaking into the microphone because I know it could be hard for the court reporter to hear. Jennifer, tell me a little bit about your immediate family. Who does that consist of?
My husband, Chris, my oldest Grant, his wife, Gabby, and our granddaughter, and my youngest, Gavin.
And is your family, well, you specifically, are you familiar with Natalie Cochran and her family?
Yes.
What, prior to now, what was your relationship like with Natalie?
We met in 2010, and, we were friends at the time. We weren't close, but we were friends. And then when my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2012, we became very close.
And why did you become close at that point?
She was a certified diabetic educator. And when he was released from the hospital in December, we went to the pharmacy to pick up his medicine, and she was working. And she took us in her office, and because it was devastating, we didn't know anything about diabetes, didn't know anything about his medicine, how to dose him. And she took us in his office, showed us how to give him shots, told us things like that.
So she provided diabetic counseling for your son?
Yes. And then for the longest time, I'm not sure how long, anytime he would eat, I would, if the carbs weren't counted, because in order to give him insulin, you'd have to count all the carbs. And if they weren't counted, on the back of a box or something, if we were just eating a plate of food, I would take a picture and text it to her. And she was very good. She knew exactly like how many carbs that there was in that meal and how much, dosage to give him.
So it sounds like you all ultimately became pretty close.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, we're very close. Yes.
Were you also, outside of Gavin's diabetes, were you also friends?
Yes. Yes, we were.
Did you go over to the Cochran's house?
Yes, we went to each other's house. We went to the movies together. We went to eat. We went to sporting events together. So yeah.
Were your and Natalie's husbands also friends?
Yes, they were friends.
Would you consider them close friends?
Yes.
In the times that you went over to the Cochran's house, did you ever take your kids with you?
Yes.
Did you ever ask Natalie to keep any sort of diabetic supplies handy for Gavin?
No, there was never any need to.
And why was there not a need to?
Because we had that at our house, and they lived close enough that she didn't need anything.
Okay. Did you and Natalie share a lot of personal details about your lives when you were friends?
I think so, yeah.
Would you say that you shared both good and bad experiences?
For sure, yes.
Okay. Do you recall any negative experiences that Natalie might have shared with you about her husband?
They would argue, just like any typical,
like anyone else.
Yes, yeah, like, me and my husband would argue, they would argue, yeah.
Just very briefly, I want to touch on something, and we won't spend much time on this, I promise. You're familiar with the Cochrane's business, TSG, Tactical Solutions Group?
Yes,
Did you and your husband invest any money with them?
yes, it was my husband and two of his partners,
Okay, but none of
business
your
partners.
personal money, it was him
Correct,
and his business partners?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to go ahead and move on to the date that we all know Michael fell ill for the last time, and that's February 6th of 2019.
Okay.
And Your Honor, at this time, I would like to have this marked as State's Exhibit 2, I believe it is. It's just the text messages between Natalie and Jennifer.
Is it two?
Yes, it's 2.
All right, very well.
I'm going to be attempting to use the projector, so if everybody could just bear with me while I do my best.
Be very
patient. I may need the video's help, actually. Jennifer, I'm gonna, if it's okay with the judge, I'm gonna approach you before I put these on the projector.
Okay.
Okay,
You may proceed.
thank you, Judge. I'm gonna take those back.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer, can you just briefly review what you have in front of you and tell me what that looks like?
They're texts between me and Natalie on February the 6th.
And is that how they would have appeared when they were on your phone?
Yes,
Do they appear to have been altered in any way?
no, and they're still on my phone. I don't delete or erase anything, so they would still be there today.
So these text messages still look exactly the same as they do on your phone today?
Yes, correct.
What year are we talking about, please?
Oh, 2019.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer, how do you know that you were speaking with Natalie when you were having these conversations?
Because that was our text stream that we had since forever, for years.
Could you speak a little louder? I'm having trouble hearing.
All right, if you could speak a little louder.
I'm sorry.
Hold that microphone closer, and I think that would
Yes.
help this day.
Okay.
Much better.
I'm gonna actually do the same.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer, I'm gonna display some of these text messages between you and Natalie on the
Okay.
projector. And if you could just read these off to me and to the jury when I put them up here,
Okay.
okay? And I'm not gonna put all of them up here, I promise.
Okay.
Judge, before we do that, may we approach on this one? This is.
Yeah.
Baby, this child here. Oh, let's see. Football team. But I think that's because
continue and take order.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jennifer, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Can you just explain to me what's going on in this conversation?
Is there any way we can tighten that up a little bit? I'm not sure the jury can read it. Are you folks having a hard time reading it? Or can you see it? You have better eyes than I do.
I know, I'm standing right in front of it. Okay. Can you just explain what's going on in that conversation?
Yes. She said that her and Mike, they were both sick, and I think they had the flu or the norovirus, is what we were told either before or after. And she had to start taking small insulin shots. I'm going to have to order a vial. I know she said that the flu and the norovirus had hit her hard and made her more sick because of the cancer that she had. So then I had asked her if she was going to the cancer center or Dr. Halsey. And then I volunteered a vial of insulin if she needed it. And she went to Halsey today.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. The document speaks for itself.
I can ask a different question, Your Honor.
Okay, I think that's a fair objection, Ms. Acorn. Maybe you can ask her some questions.
So Jennifer, at this point, you were offering to help out a friend in need. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And I'm going to remove that sheet. Jennifer, just looking over this one, did she accept your offer of help?
Yes, she did. She asked if she could borrow a vial of insulin.
Did you provide that insulin to her?
I didn't personally. I was running late. I was going to the church's mission center that day, and I had put together a few drinks, and I put the insulin in a bag and gave it to my husband, and he dropped it off on the porch on the way to work.
What sort of insulin did you put in that bag, if you remember?
It was Humalog. That's what my son takes, is Humalog.
Was it a new bottle?
Yes.
Did you require a prescription to get that particular type of insulin or no?
Yes. No, you have to have a prescription for that.
Okay. You didn't send any needles over with it though?
No.
If you'll just bear with me for a second here. You guys had a lot of conversations. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So, did you understand what Natalie was talking about when she made this statement that Mike was so mad about not being able to go somewhere if he had to take two of the blood pressure pills? Do you know where they were supposed to be going?
They were going to Virginia.
I'm going to object. This may be based on hearsay.
We won't know if it's based on hearsay until she responds.
Well, then we need to establish the foundation, whether it's based on hearsay.
All
or
right,
not.
maybe you could establish a little foundation.
Did you have any conversations with Natalie previously about where they were to be going that day?
Yes, they were borrowing our plane to fly to Virginia.
And that was a conversation that you and she directly had, not that you heard from someone else?
Correct.
Okay, Jennifer, can you tell me who that's a picture of?
Mike.
That's Mike. And Natalie sent you that photograph?
Yes.
Did she provide any context for that? Did she call you or anything, or is this, you
No.
just received this out of the blue?
Just that.
What did this picture mean to you when you received it?
I mean, just,
Judge, I'm going to object to this form of question. What do you mean to?
I think it's fair. I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness can answer.
just that it was just shocking that he was laying there.
But you didn't know what his condition was at that point? Is
No,
that fair?
no.
Do you know what these numbers mean that are featured in the below text message from Natalie? Or did you know at the time what they meant?
She was just giving his vitals.
Now, at this point, your husband had already dropped off the bag of insulin.
The prosecutor is testifying, Your Honor.
Yes,
Some of the
if you could
facts
read
not
Frank's
the evidence.
question.
Sure you are. Had Chris already gone by their house at that point in time?
He went there that morning.
Had you been by their house at any point that day?
I did later to drop off more drinks.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact time, but it was after that picture.
Now, I'm gonna put that same screenshot back on here for just a second. One of those readings says BG 145. What is that reading?
Judge, again, unless we establish that the witness has some type of knowledge.
Your Honor, I believe we have established that the witness has some type of knowledge about what that could mean, because once she answers, I believe we'll know that her son, being a diabetic, gives her that knowledge herself.
Perhaps you could ask her if she does have that knowledge.
Okay. Jennifer, do you have knowledge of what the BG stands for in that set of vitals that you spoke about earlier?
Yes, BG is blood sugar. We would always refer to Gavin's blood sugar as BG or BS. It was always one or the other.
And not speaking about Michael, but speaking about your general experience with diabetes with your son, what does that number mean to you?
That is high. That is a, his, for a non-diabetic or even a diabetic, it's 80 to 120 is the normal range. So 145 is a high blood sugar.
And you just know that because your son's diabetic, is that right?
Correct.
Did Ms. Cochran ever provide you with the reason that she sent you that photograph?
No. No.
Did she explain to you what she believed had happened to Michael to put him in that position?
Later on said that he was sick and he threw up in the sink and collapsed or passed out.
Did you ever visit the house after that point in time on that date?
Like I said earlier, I had dropped off drinks, but I don't remember what time that was. And I didn't go inside.
Did Natalie tell you if she had called for help or anything of that nature?
No.
Did she tell you if she had contacted anyone else?
She had said that Stephanie and John Hamilton were coming by. And then the contractors were the ones that actually got him from the kitchen to the couch.
Now, I know you ultimately didn't go to the house that day. Did your husband go that you're aware of?
Yes, he went that evening.
And then after that, do you know what happened to Michael?
Once Chris got there, and I don't remember the time, sometime between 7 and 8, I'm not sure, that night, he took him to the hospital.
Objection.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
That's hearsay.
Pardon?
That's hearsay.
Overrule. Go ahead.
And she was, and lack of personal knowledge, that's enough.
I'll overrule the objection. Continue, Ms. Davis. may have to rephrase the question or ask it again.
I believe the question was, do you have any knowledge of what happened to Michael after the time that your husband had arrived at the house?
My husband took him to Raleigh General, and we were texting. He had called me to let me know that.
Please note my continuing objection to any type of hearsay or statements by any other third party.
All right. Do we anticipate that Mr. Davis will testify in this trial?
Yes, we will, Your Honor.
All right, with that understanding, I'm going to allow it. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
They took him to Raleigh General, and I'm not sure how long he was there, but he was on a ventilator quite soon from the time he got there, and then they end up transporting him to CMC that night.
And do these text messages support your recollection of how that went?
Yes,
And in fact, Ms. Cochran herself advised you that he was put on a bench?
correct.
Now, while all of this was going on, did you all have an event that was going to be happening with the Shady Spring youth sport, excuse me?
Yes, the middle school baseball was having a bingo with the high school volleyball, Shady, for a fundraiser that Saturday evening.
Did you and Ms. Cochran discuss that while Mike was in the hospital?
Yes, because she was working on getting everything together. And I mean, she was, organizing it, so she was still working on it.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a good way to phrase this. Did you find it odd at all that she continued to work on bingo while her husband was incapacitated?
Judge, I'm going to object to that. That's a comment on the defendant's character.
Sustained.
This comment, I hope the swelling affects the mean side of his brain and the rest stays good. What did
Oh,
you
wow. That's a hell of a thing to say.
Your Honor, now we're entering the area of medical knowledge. This witness is not qualified to interpret this medical information.
Your Honor, I don't believe we're entering the area of medical knowledge. She's simply talking about the decedent being mean.
I think so too. I don't think this has any relation at all to medical terms or knowledge. I'll overrule the objection and permit the witness to testify.
Just that, the mean side of his brain where, if he would get grouchy or, get mad, that's how I took that.
But there's nothing about Michael that stood out to you as particularly more mean than any other person?
No.
This was a little blurry, so forgive me. But if you can tell me, Jennifer, what is that photo of?
That's at Raleigh General when they're working on Mike.
And that photo also came from Natalie?
Correct.
That very first text message, Jennifer, if you could just read that to yourself for me. Do you have any personal knowledge of what sort of meds Natalie's talking about at this point, about getting Mike off of?
He would take supplements for working out, like the kinds you get at GNC or whatever. Like that was my knowledge. Pre-workout and things like that.
another photograph that was sent to you by Natalie. What is that photograph of?
Once again, Mike, I believe that's it. Raleigh General.
Now, with this question, I'm not asking you to speculate at all, but I'm asking you for your personal knowledge, given that your son is diabetic, okay?
Okay.
BG this AM is 44. If your son's blood glucose is 44, what would you expect to see?
If he wasn't already in a coma at 44, he would be very close to it. Anytime he had low blood sugar, he would get sweaty, clammy. His legs would get weak. When it was super low, it would even start going into his arms. He couldn't feel his arms.
Now, while all this was going on, were you also handling all of the bingo organization for Natalie at home?
I was helping. I wasn't in charge of anything, but I was trying to help and do what I could.
Did you get to go up and visit Michael at any point while he was at CAMC?
Yes, we went every day.
And did you see him awake at any point while you were there?
No, he was never awake.
What was Ms. Cochran's demeanor like while you were there?
Going to object to that.
She was very calm. She was in, just in control. I felt that she was strong. She was, I guess normal as you can be.
What sort of condition was Michael in when you saw him?
He was intubated. He was non-responsive. He just laid there.
And then shortly after that, he was moved to hospice, is that right?
Correct.
Did you ever get to see him while he was there?
Yes.
Did you speak with Natalie a lot while you all were visiting Mike at hospice?
Yes, we did. We spoke often.
And did you offer to help her at any point?
Yes. I tried, I was trying to be there for her and just comfort her. Like I said, I felt that she was been strong. But, I had even asked her at one point if there was anything that I could do to help her, anything I could get for her. And she had made a very just odd comment. She said, if you could help me hold a pillow over his face, because I don't like seeing him this way.
And at hospice, is that the last time that you ever saw Michael alive?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Vick.
Ms. Davis, first I want to ask you about the losses that your husband's company sustained as a result of this fraud. What were your losses?
It was with him and his business partners, so it wasn't any personal loss of ours. He was the third.
Well, let me ask you about your husband and his partners. How much did they lose?
They lost over $500,000.
$500,000. Your husband at some point was Natalie Cochran's attorney, right?
He would have to answer that, but yes.
Well, do you know or not?
Well, yes, he did.
Okay. And yet, after he and his company lost over $500,000, he testified against her in federal court, didn't he?
Correct.
Okay. Her own attorney.
He was not representing her at that time.
Okay. Okay. And let's talk about this humor log for a second. you know that there are two types of insulin. One is Novolog and one is Humalog, right?
Correct.
And you know that because your son, very sadly, is afflicted with diabetes 1, as we call it, right?
Yes.
Which is a very serious problem.
Yes.
Well, Novolog, you cannot get over the counter, true?
You cannot get it over the counter.
But Humalog, you can.
Humalog, you can't. That's a prescription.
You cannot?
You cannot. It's a prescription.
And so if there was any testimony here that you can, of course, that would be incorrect in your mind.
Right.
I see. All right. Now, you, of course, do not know. Well, let's strike that. Is your testimony here today that Natalie Cochran never had any medication for your son?
Correct.
Did you, in fact, allow her to pick up the medication for your son from the pharmacies?
Yes, she would pick up medicine and then drop it off at the house.
I'm going to ask you again whether she was allowed to have the medication in her possession for your son.
Yes, but she did not take it home with her.
Yes or no, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to mark this. Defense exhibit
Number 8.
number 8.
Thank you.
If I may approach the witness.
Yes, you may.
I'm gonna hand you what's been marked, the defendant's exhibit number 8, and ask you whether you would recognize this document.
Yes, I've never seen it before, but
What would this document be, ma'am?
it's showing the doctor that prescribed Gavin his insulin.
Would you turn to page 2? I'm sorry, page 3. Who was picking up that medication for?
Natalie.
All right. I'm going to ask that this exhibit be admitted into the evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
No, Your Honor.
Or Ms. Akins, I'm sorry. It is admitted into evidence.
How many times has Natalie Cochran picked up medication for your son, ma'am?
I'm not sure how many times.
Numerous times. Would
Yeah.
it be fair to say?
Yes, I would say yes, several times.
Okay. And was always a Humalog, right?
Not always.
Not always?
No, because he had other prescriptions.
Okay. Have you ever injected Humalog into your son's body?
Yes.
What dosage? A vial?
It was from the vial. I don't remember what dosages because it would all depend on what he ate. So
Okay.
I don't know, like I can't say right off.
Okay. Were there any times that you would inject the whole vial into his body?
Oh, never, no.
Never?
No,
Half a vial?
no, just
No.
very little.
Very little.
Yes, like a millimeter or it just, like I said, it depends on the dosage.
And every time you injected the vial into his body, he didn't drop unconscious on the floor, did he?
No, but several times I had actually dosed him too much insulin and he got to the point where he would almost, pass out. His blood sugar would drop real low. And we were able to give him a glucagon, which would bring his blood sugar back up.
But I asked you whether ever, upon your injection of Humalog into his body, he lost consciousness and dropped
No,
either on the floor or anywhere?
no,
No. Now, would you agree with me that you're not a doctor, right?
correct.
You're not an endocrinologist.
No,
Right. You're not an expert in this field. All you can tell this jury about medication involving diabetes is from what you observed as the mother of an ill child, right?
right.
Okay. Would you agree with me, ma'am, that different bodies, different human bodies react differently to medication?
Yes,
So you have absolutely no idea how Michael Cochran reacted and to what medication.
correct.
I want to ask you now about Michael a little bit. You've known this family since 2010 until, well, 2019, I presume.
Correct.
Michael, you said, was taking steroids, right?
I never said that.
Well, what did he take?
I always knew him to take the supplements that you would get from GNC and over the counter, but I never knew him to take actual steroids.
You have absolutely no clue what this gentleman was taking.
Only what Natalie had told me.
Right. And did you ever see him take any medication?
No.
No. He was a bodybuilder, wasn't he?
Yes, he lifted weights.
Cared about his image of his physique, right?
Yes.
In fact, he was taking substances that were less than kosher. Did you know about that?
No, I did not.
Did you know that he was taking substances that were sold online from Mexico or some other wild place?
I did not until the day that he fell ill. She had said that he was taking Mexican supplements, but I didn't know that until the day he fell ill when she had texted.
Well, it's strange. Now, did you ever talk to your husband about Michael taking any supplements?
I mean, yeah, he knew that he took supplements as well.
Now, didn't your husband try to dissuade Michael from taking all that stuff?
Yes, that was after Mike was diagnosed with seizures,
Right.
and he
So
talked
Mike-
about not taking the
So,
medicine.
so
Sorry.
Michael had some medical problems, didn't he?
Yes,
Well, let's start with 2017. He had a back problem and had to go to hospital for back surgery, right?
yes, I believe.
That may not have had anything to do with seizures, but in October of 2018, he went to the hospital with the conditions that were similar to when he collapsed on the floor, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay. What was the diagnosis then on him?
Objection, Your Honor, how is she expected to have that information?
Sustained.
Did you talk to him after he came out of the hospital in one day?
Yes, we would have spoke, yes.
Did he tell you that he hated hospitals with an unbridled passion and would never go back to a hospital?
I knew his disdain for hospitals, yes.
And then he wasn't unlucky because on the second day of November of that year, he went to the hospital with the same conditions that similar conditions or maybe even the same conditions that he had when he collapsed on the floor. Didn't he?
Yes.
And stayed in the hospital for 4 or 5 days, right?
I don't remember the exact time.
Now, do you know what was wrong with him?
I don't know if it was at that time that we were told that he was diagnosed with seizures.
Seizures. Did you also hear anything about his brain swelling?
I know they had done MRIs and CAT scans, but I don't remember if it was the November visit or the October visit.
Well, did they say anything about his having a mass on the brain?
I remember they said something about having a mass on the brain, but then the next scan showed that there wasn't anything.
But then they said that he had brain swelling, right?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No.
What did he appear to you like when he was in the hospital at that time? Sluggish? Slow reacting? Tell us.
I mean, by the time that I had seen him, he was talking and everything. I mean, he wasn't feeling well, but I didn't see him right away. So
All right. In February of next year, so it's almost, what, 2 months later, did he appear to you to be sick?
he wasn't sick, no, not
No?
until the day.
No, he wasn't sick until that date, until the 6th of February.
Right, that I'm aware of.
Okay. When did you see him last before the February 6th?
I don't know if it would have been the day before or a couple of days before that, because he came over and put a ceiling fan in our living room. But I don't know the date of that exactly, but it was a few days before.
If there were other people who saw him acting very strange and sick and otherwise almost incapacitated, would that surprise you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, you have absolutely no idea what Michael took in terms of the names of the medications or the supplements or whatever medication he was taking.
I do not know.
Do you know how long he has been taking these supplements?
No.
Have you ever talked to Natalie's children about Michael's use of steroids, anabolics, whatever he was using?
I don't remember if we did.
Okay. Well, they were there all day in their home. They would know, wouldn't they?
They would know. I wasn't there though, so
Okay.
that wasn't anything I discussed with them.
Okay. Did you ever ask Michael what he was taking?
No.
Well, did you know that he was eating these medications by a plateful?
No, I did not.
Did you know that he was using insulin regularly, on a regular basis?
No, I did not.
Okay. How many times did Natalie Cochran pick up this Humalog for your son prior to February 4th?
I don't know how many times.
How many times did she pick up that insulin Humalog after Michael's demise?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. And did she ever take that medication home? Or is it your testimony here today that invariably she would bring it to your house?
I mean, I can't say for certain. I don't know.
So
I would assume she would bring it straight to me because that would be something that we would need to put in the refrigerator.
So the insulin that was found in her refrigerator, that would be abnormal, wouldn't it?
She shouldn't have any of, I know my son's insulin because he needed that.
Right, but if law enforcement officers found a Humalog vial in her refrigerator, what would that tell you?
I don't know.
Right. So is it possible, Ms. Davis, that as you sit here today, you don't know how many times Natalie Cochran took that medication, that insulin, to her place, where she stored it, what she did with it?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Now, also, I want to ask you this. When Michael was putting up that fan in your house, he had trouble doing that, didn't he?
I don't remember. Him and my husband worked on it. I just know he was there to put up the ceiling fan.
But you didn't know how he acted that day.
I don't recall.
I see. All right. Might have a second.
So I don't know too much about insulin, but I'm going, oh, shoot.
There was a time when your son used the pump, the insulin pump, right?
Correct.
Okay. Then why would you need the regular Humalog if you had a pump?
Because that's what you use to fill the pump. We would have to use Humalog and inject it into his pump before we put his insulin pump on his arm.
And if the pump didn't work?
If the pump didn't work, then we would refill a new one
Okay.
and put it back on him.
So is that your testimony that you always had either the pump or the insulin?
Yes, he cannot live without either.
Okay. All right. You said that you observed Natalie in the hospital while Mr. Cochran was there. And she acted, you said she acted strong?
Yes, I thought she was strong. Yes.
What other words did you use?
She was calm.
Calm. And yet she was so concerned that she didn't want to see Michael in that condition. And she would rather see him dead, right?
I didn't say that.
Well, you said something about putting a pillow on his head.
I asked her what I could do to help or if there's anything I could get her. And she had made that comment.
Would you agree with me, ma'am, that people act very differently in situations like that?
Yes.
And people are distraught by the very fact that their loved one may be on a threshold of death, and they say things and do things that they would not normally not say or do.
Yes.
So you may find this odd, what my client may have said, but you're not a psychologist and you cannot say anything about that comment that would make you believe that she's guilty of anything. Right?
Correct.
Now, when were you informed of Mr. Cochran's condition on the, what was it, the first day?
The second?
Well, in relation to the shot that he supposedly got from, well, I guess you would claim Natalie.
I'm sorry, what is your question?
Well, we're looking at a shot that was apparently administered to Mr. Cochran. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that. I'm not sure your question.
So you don't even know whether his condition was caused by any shot of insulin?
No, we don't know what his condition was caused by.
Okay. Well, Natalie texted you and told you that she was sick that day.
Correct.
Now, you've known her for a long time, and you knew that she had several medical conditions.
Yes,
right?
she had found out she had cancer and it was stage 3, I believe.
And she was being treated for it, or at least being diagnosed with it, or required a second opinion during that time, right?
Yes.
And she also had a heart problem that required all kinds of attention, medical attention.
Yes.
Correct? Now, well, since you know so much about insulin, what else can insulin be used for in a household?
In my life, it's only been used for diabetes. I don't know what else you would use it for.
Bringing the sugar up or down?
It brings your blood sugar down.
All right. So if Natalie Cochran had a problem with her sugar, not necessarily diabetes, would you find it really strange that she had diabetes in her, and that she had insulin in her home?
No.
No. Did your son have to take any steroids? Was he given any steroids as part of his treatment of
For diabetes, no.
Now, do you have any medical knowledge to assess the effect of any steroids on sugar? Or
No,
would you not?
I don't have any knowledge, no.
All right. Natalie told you that day that she was taking steroids, right?
Yes,
Do you have any reason to doubt that?
no,
And that the steroids caused her sugar to rise. She told you that, right?
yes, she told me that.
And so when she used some insulin, or whether she had insulin at home, for that particular purpose, you wouldn't find it, you wouldn't find it strange that she did.
No,
Okay. No. Was Mike, no, Michael Cochran, ever sick in your presence?
yes,
And I'm not talking about February. I'm talking about any other times.
Yes.
What was he sick with?
we thought, and I don't know if it was the October or November, that it was mold,
Okay.
possibly poisoning or mold
And
exposure.
how did he react?
He was sick and nauseous. I don't remember more than that.
Did you ever see him collapse?
I never saw him collapse, no.
Did you hear about him collapsing?
Not other than that day,
How about having convulsions or
No.
epilepsy?
no.
Have you ever heard him talk about not taking his medication because he didn't really care about the doctors and medical care?
Natalie had told us that he had stopped taking his seizure medication.
Well, and you as a friend of Michael, did you ever approach him about that?
No, I
Did you
did
ever-
not.
Did anybody talk to him about it?
I don't know.
Okay. Um, What is your profession, man?
I'm a stay-at-home mom.
I'm sorry. I'm so
I'm a
sorry.
stay-at-home mom.
Oh, you have the tough one. And I'm very sorry about your child having diabetes. That's this is a pretty serious illness, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Now, have you yourself participated in any business transactions with Natalie or Michael Cochran?
She would help with the juvenile diabetes fundraisers.
Okay.
She would sponsor those, and we did a motorcycle rally. She held a couple of those for him, and also a 5K run for diabetes.
Did Michael live in luxury?
I mean, just normal as anyone else would,
Beautiful.
in my opinion.
Beautiful house?
Yes, they had a beautiful house.
They had more than one house, right?
Yeah, they did buy other property, yes.
Okay. How about, well, we men call it toys. Motorcycles?
Yes.
How many did he have?
I know of one. I don't know if he had multiple. I mean, I do know of the one because he rode it in the motorcycle rally.
He has a pretty nice car too.
Yes.
What was it?
He had a truck, a pickup truck.
Didn't he have an antique 65? Very sexy car. An antique.
Yes, I don't remember
You don't remember that?
but now it was a Cobra. Yeah.
Cobra, all right. Did you go on any vacations with them?
Yes, we did.
Who paid the bill?
Well, we would pay for our half and they would pay for their half. And
Did Michael ever treat?
Yes, we would treat their meals and they would treat our meals.
Would you agree with me that he was at his absolute happiest when he had the money?
I mean, I don't know.
Was he acting
I don't know
very
if he
happy?
was at his happiest during that time.
Okay. Would you agree with me that he was a dominant character in the marriage to Natalie?
Yeah, as my husband is as well with me.
I'm concerned about Michael and Natalie. What Michael said, that was the law, right?
I believe so.
Okay. How did he treat the children?
He treated him like any normal dad.
They had everything that they could have under the sun. He would buy them everything. They would have their own luxury life. Isn't that true?
He would buy them whatever they needed.
Okay. How about money per se? Did he ever flash the cash, so to speak?
No. I don't
Never took anybody out to eat, paid for everybody?
Well, yes, he would do that.
He would do that. Now, what do you know about Michael's business? What did he do for a living?
They were doing the government contracts.
Okay. Michael?
I mean, it was him and Natalie.
Okay. What was his role in this government contracts thing?
I don't know. I don't know his exact role.
Okay. But he talked about it?
Yes, they would talk about it.
Well, what did he tell you about?
I didn't talk personally to him.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just when we were in a setting together.
All right. I'm gonna ask you about your husband ever working out with him? Or did you ever work out with him?
No. I don't know if my husband ever did.
He was trying to be a bodybuilder, or at least he was a bodybuilder, right?
During the time we knew them, he would lift weights.
Okay.
I mean, to be a professional bodybuilder, I don't know about that, but he would lift weights during the time we were friends with him.
Was he proud of his physique and
Yes.
musculature? He liked to be seen as fit and nimble and whatever else, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did he spend a lot of time in the gym that you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Where was their business, by the way? The contract business. Where was their office?
They had a building on Eisenhower Drive.
Okay. Describe that. Was there any front desk, secretary, the office decorations? What?
I don't remember much about it. I remember there's a couch, a little kitchenette.
Not much of an office.
And then, yeah, I mean, I don't remember much about it other than that.
Okay. Now, you obviously knew that Natalie was a pharmacist, right?
Correct.
Did you know about her reputation in the community as a good pharmacist? Knowledgeable?
She was very knowledgeable.
She was very knowledgeable. She was knowledgeable of more than just insulin, right? She knew about other substances.
I believe she also took care of maybe people on cholesterol medicine, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. She had years of experience as a pharmacist, right?
Yes.
Well, that person would have knowledge of all kinds of drugs, right?
I would assume, yes.
Even those drugs that kill silently?
I don't know what she would have knowledge of.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. You were, if not the closest friend of Natalie, at least one of the closest friends. At the time of Michael's death, would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Would it then surprise you that Natalie, who was obviously in distress over her husband's condition, would be notifying you every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, every hour as to what his condition, sudden condition is. Would it surprise you? Would it shock you?
Would it surprise me if she did or if she didn't?
If she did,
Either way, it wouldn't surprise me.
no, or if she didn't. Either way, it wouldn't surprise you because you were her friend
Right.
and she had her. But by the way, do you know how long they were married?
18, 19 years, maybe.
High school? Were they high school sweethearts? You know?
They told us they were high school sweethearts, yes.
Yeah. So this woman who has just put her husband in a hospital, who may be in a coma, she needs to talk to somebody about it. And that would be you. Would that be anything shocking to you?
No.
Okay. And she didn't tell you anything that would suggest to you that she was the one who, for lack of a better phrase, executed him.
No.
Of course not. If I may have a second.
All right.
Not would she tell you she the one who executed him. This guy, I need to hire him in case I get in trouble. God forbid.
What was the backup plan for your son? And I'm just gonna use the word, well, the letter G. I don't want to bring children's names into this.
His name is Grant and Gavin.
Okay, well, out of the respect for him, we don't necessarily want to bring him into public knowledge.
Right.
How old is he now?
My youngest is 19.
Okay, so he's an adult by now.
Yes.
Okay. What was the backup plan if you could not, for some reason, administer the medication to him? Then was Natalie in charge of that?
No, my husband. If I couldn't, then my
Okay.
husband would.
Was there any contact with the school where your child was attending? That if you could not be there, that Natalie would be called to administer the medication?
I don't remember that because
Okay.
the first year he was on shots, he didn't allow the nurse to even give him shots. I had to go to the school every day
Okay.
to give him shots. So I don't know.
Okay. If I may have a second.
Very well.
All right. Once again, thank you guys for being here at Trial Watch with Demetra. We are watching a Ponzi scheme wife
Thank you, Your Honor.
murder trial.
Redirect be lengthy, Ms. Acorn.
No, Your Honor, it won't.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
We're going to end for today on this after this witness full testimony.
The vital signs that we talked about earlier that Natalie texted to you, were you ever able to verify that those actually were Michael's vitals at that time?
No.
Do you know who set up all of Michael's supplements and medications?
I know, well, Natalie had told me that she always, would set everything up.
Did you ever have Natalie pick up insulin for Gavin and not receive it?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And just on a personal level, have you ever had a loved one, even Gavin, who became seriously ill?
Yes.
Did it occur to you to take photographs of them while they were ill?
No.
Did it ever occur to you to attempt to end their life because they were so ill?
No.
And I know that you and Natalie were very close prior to Michael's death, and even for a little while afterwards. Was she always honest with you during that time?
Judge, I'm going to object as the comment on the defendant's character.
I think I must sustain that objection.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, anything further, Mr. Victor?
The prosecuting attorney right now asked you whether she, that is my client, Natalie Cochran, was setting up medication for her husband, and you said yes?
I don't remember if they were pill boxes or what, but his normal, daily medicine, whether it was vitamins or whatever, she would always put together for him.
And you know that for a fact?
That's what she told me. So
And she would, so you presumed, I guess, that she would put up all the supplements from Mexico and from some other God only knows what place on his plate? Is that what you would assume?
just whatever she told me.
You went to the Cochrane's home, right?
Correct.
Have you ever seen their medicine cabinet?
If I recall, it was, and I don't remember what was in it, it was just by the sink in a cabinet.
Would it surprise you to know that Michael had his own medicine cabinet that nobody had access to? Would it
Yes.
surprise you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all. Thank you.
Anything further, Ms. Ackford?
No, Your Honor.
This witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any difficulty?
Okay, so we have definitely ended for today this part 1, right, of the Ponzi scheme wife murder trial. That was quite interesting, with that witness, because on one hand, when she testified, she's the neighbor, she's the friend. According to the state and under the state's direct questioning, she's the one who, is definitely that she dropped off some insulin to her friend because she needed it because she didn't have none. Right? She also talked about how the lady didn't call nobody. So it seemed like even though they was both friends at one point in time, like she kind of doubted or not trusted what happened, that day. But what's even stranger, and I can't wait to hear the testimony, I guess it's going to be obviously put forth by the defense, is I think the defense is really building the case doing that testimony like the victim, Michael, was almost like some type of steroid junkie. He used words like a plate of drugs. He ingested a plate of drugs each day. Now you're talking about a locked up secret drug cabinet, medicine cabinet, right? And then it's very interesting. I think when they was talking about the testimony and the state was asking her about how was the defendant's behavior or reaction when they took him to the hospital, her husband, she was coming across to see me like very cold-blooded. And I still think she comes across cold-blooded. Who texts their friend, even their best friend, when a husband or a loved one, anybody, is in the hospital and has a brain swell? Well, I wonder if it's gonna help the side of his brain that he mean, the mean side of his brain. Who says something like that? That's very suspicious and very cold-blooded like. And then also the fact, who sends a picture? Why did she send a picture to this lady of her husband collapsed on the floor, but didn't call 911? Who does that? So all those things are suspicious of the defendant, make me suspicious of the defendant and make me think, this don't sound too good. But at the same time, Michael sounded like some type of hyped up steroid junkie. Rest in peace. So I think for every action that the prosecution is doing, the defense is absolutely counteracting, right? And it seemed like every time the prosecution try to make they point stick, the defense is doing its job and trying to and kind of minimize it. It is very bizarre, and it's kind of slow motion with it, but it's intriguing, and you have to kind of like listen to it. You can't just guess what's gonna happen next, what they gonna say. What about that comment that she made, that this lady say her friend made at the time? Because that was her friend. And it is strange as hell when you ask a friend, is there anything I could do? Because your husband in the hospital and gravely ill, and they say, yeah, help me hold the pillow over his face. I don't want to see him this way. That's like a very weird way to put something. And why would she be having such a hard time seeing him that way at the hospital when you saw him unconscious on your couch all day and you didn't call 111? You saw him fall out and collapse on the floor in your kitchen, and you can watch that and don't call 911, but you can call the construction workers to come and move him to the couch. Right? So it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on with this case, and we are just getting into it. It has all of the things, the factors that make a case, almost like a TV drama, but this is real drama. Yet again, we're dealing in a case with money, marriage, secrets, and murder. The Ponzi scheme wife trial. This has been part 1 here. We saw the opening statements and we saw the first 2 of the state's witnesses. Both sides have made some points and both sides have, but hey, it's interesting. So make sure y'all stay tuning in, unless it's some type of, let's pray that no one experiences any type of power outage or any type of mishaps with this cold front or whatever they call it, Arctic front coming through. As long as the internet and everything is on, I'll be on tomorrow at 11 a.m. Okay. So thank y'all for coming. If you have any comments, definitely let me know underneath this live. And look, and I'll see y'all tomorrow, and I'll see y'all tonight for the best of trial. We're still continuing with the burn trial. We have moved over to, we should be getting to one of them daughters testifying tonight. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for joining me. Y'all have a great and fantastic afternoon. Stay warm.
Thanks for watching. Do not forget, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Like, comment and share. See you next time.